I would like to open the meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School District's Board of Education for January 12th, 2016. Dr. Cash, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Muy buenas tardes y feliz año nuevo a todos. Tenemos los aparatos disponibles para la interpretación en español, si alguien desea usarlos, por esas puertas dobles. Muchas gracias.
And I would also note that we have headsets for the hearing impaired available. Just please indicate if you need a headset. Moving on to item number 5, introductions, proclamations, presentations, or recognitions. Dr. Cash.
Thank you very much. This evening we're very fortunate to have the student board report done by 2 Dos Pueblos Chargers, Peter Apple, is it that correct? Yep. Apple, ASB representative, and Nathan Alvarez, ASB president. So why don't you two please take the podium.
Hello, I'm Nathan Alvarez. I'm the ASB president at DP.
Hi, I'm Peter Apple, and I'm doing the student board report for schools in Goleta and Santa Barbara. First, at La Cuesta and Alta Vista High School, La Cuesta students will be participating in the Strengths Academy workshop, where they identify their academic strengths and deficits to help them succeed academically. La Cuesta's winter back-to-school night is February 2nd, and La Cuesta students are participating in the Talking in Class workshop with Just Communities, and will be presenting their reflections in the boardroom on Wednesday, January 20th in the afternoon. A dual enrollment class where students will earn linguistic anthropology credits from City College through the skills program at UCSB will be offered starting January 25th at La Cuesta. Alta Vista students are beginning a synthesis essay about the Vietnam War. And now on to Dos Pueblos High School. Beautify DP is on Saturday, January 23rd, where students come and participate in cleaning the school and just making our school a better place. No Name Calling Week is on January 18th through the 22nd. And a big dance at Dos Pueblos is the Morp Dance, which is like the opposite of prom. And it will be on February 5th after the game against Santa Barbara, so our big rival game. Winter sports are now in session, and spring sports are starting to have tryouts. The all-school lip dub is happening January 15th. It was supposed to be earlier, but after a couple reschedulings because of other matters, we're now having it on January 15th. Now on to San Marcos High School. Thursday, January 14th through Saturday, January 16th from 7 to 9:30 in the auditorium, the annual One Acts will be taking place. This free event will showcase various short plays performed in the round. January 30th, the Sadie Hawkins dance will take place from 7 to 10 p.m. And lastly, spring back to school night is February 9th. Santa Barbara High School, the dance program is hosting its annual winter dance recital. It will take place in the theater on January 7th from 7 to 8:30. Open house will be January 13th from 6 to 8 p.m. And the student-directed Music of the Night theater production will be taking place January 28th to the 30th with showtimes at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments from board members? Nathan, could you stay up there for a second?
Yeah. That was my question. Where's Mr. Alvarez going?
So, as board members are aware and our community's aware, Nathan Alvarez was recently recognized as the 2015 Goleta Teen of the Year by the Rotary Club of Goleta Noontime. He received $1,500 from the Rotary Club and another $1,000 from the Goleta Valley Chamber of Commerce. Nathan was selected as a result of his outstanding academic work as well as his extracurricular activities, such as the Engineering Academy. He's got his DPEA jacket on, that's good. ASB President, Letterman's Club President, Environmental Adventures Club President, Site Council Vice President. What happened there? Nathan is also a peer tutor. He works with Interact and also is one of the peace builders at Dos Pueblos High School as well. I had the distinct pleasure and honor of meeting Nathan at my State of the Schools address this past fall, and knew that he was the son of one of our administrators, Michael Alvarez, the assistant principal at La Cumbre Junior High School, and the son of and that as his son, he was well familiar with our school system. But I was most impressed beyond that with the questions that he asked me post my presentation. It indicated to me a depth of intellect and an understanding of education way beyond his years as a high school student. So I was not surprised. Michael is not only joined by his father tonight, but also by his mother, Virginia, who worked in our district for years prior to becoming the chief business official at the Montecito Union School District. Nathan represents the best and brightest of what we have in our community, and it's with our heartfelt thanks and congratulations that Dr. Drotti presents you with a certificate, and we welcome and honor you as the Goleta Teen of the Year. Congratulations. Thank you. Board members?
I have to say, I've known Michael Alvarez for many, many years, and I'm so proud of you and was not at all surprised. You've done tremendous work as a high school student, a junior high student, and I wish great things for you for the future.
So we're continuing on, I guess, with the Dos Pueblos thing. I'd like three young ladies to please come to the podium. Megan Handley, Sienna Applebaum, and Jenny Resnick to step forward and please come to the podium. We have certificates for all three girls, and let me tell you why. First, we'll start with Megan Handley. Megan was selected as one of the 2016 national winners for the NCWIT Award for Aspirations in Computing. According to this organization, with over 31 applications, this year's Aspirations Award competition was the biggest yet. And we are so proud to welcome you, Megan, into the ranks of a very exclusive group of accomplished and inspiring young women who have won the national award in years past. NCWIT stands for the National Center for Women and IT. Megan is entitled to an all-expense-paid trip to the award weekend on March 4th through 6th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Congratulations, Megan. And standing with her are two students who were two runner-ups, Sienna Applebaum and Jenny Resnick. So congratulations to both of you as well. Great jobs. Go Chargers.
Amir asked you to take that.
Oh, that's good. Very good. Well, congratulations to all of you and all of our Chargers that were here this evening. Way to go. And finally, I would like to remind our community and our board that this week the 3rd Annual Academy Showcase takes place this Thursday at Earl Warren Showgrounds. We're inviting the community again to join us. Parents and interested students will be able to talk to students and staff, watch demonstrations by several of our academies and the International Baccalaureate program. It all begins at 4:30. And in addition to our own high school counselors who have been very supportive and helpful, we will have UCSB and Santa Barbara City counselors on hand as well. Yes?
Just a quick question on that, because that's earlier this year than in past years, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to be sure that that's called out to parents, that they don't think it's the same time as in previous years. Okay.
How late does that go? How late are you planning?
6:30.
6:30, okay.
And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Move on to board comments and correspondence. Mr. Herron.
I'll continue my role down here. Obviously, over the holidays, it was sort of quiet, But I went to Franklin School for the ICANN concert. I've watched those children, I think, for the last 4 years, and how they've progressed in playing what started out to be their first violin, now to full-fledged orchestras over the past 4 years. And then after that, went to the West Side for the ICANN performance there. Same thing, but they've only been doing it for 2 years. The difference, to see how these kids progress over 2 to 4 years, and what that program is doing for them musically is unbelievable. And then the other night we went to Luke Theater for their 13th anniversary celebration. And then last night went to Adelante and their school board meeting, and they have voted to put in a security system covering all their classrooms. And they'll need Mr. Hetyoung's help. Whoever, Mr. Hetyoung, your help. Thank you.
Ms. Parker?
I just want to share that this evening you'll see me sneak out at 8:15 because I have to go take care of children. So I apologize, and I have left comments around conference item H6 with Dr. Cash and Mr. Herron. So thank you.
No other comments. We'll move on to announcement of closed session action. We had one item to report, which is the appointment of Alana Matlick as the for the internal auditor of fiscal services position. So I want to congratulate that person. I don't know if she's here. No.
She doesn't know yet.
Oh. She'll have a nice morning present. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, and the motion was passed by, made by Ms. Parker, second by Ms. Idelson, and it passed 5-0. Moving on to public comments on non-agenda matters.
And we have 3 speakers. They'll be given 3 minutes with a 30-second to the end warning by Dr. Durati. And first, if we could have Jacqueline DeLong, and then followed will be Jay Bishop, and then Kenneth Locke.
No, it's sliding off. Hold on, I'm starting this. All right. Do I just start?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so as a mother of 2 children who are just beginning their public school education, I am passionate about them receiving a well-rounded education, one that supports innovative and creative learning. I am the visual and performing arts writer for the Santa Barbara Sentinel. I write about art, culture, and the local creative people of this town. My children's father is an international artist who has exhibited at the Santa Barbara Art Museum. My son wants to be a painter like his dad, and my daughter dreams of becoming a ballerina. And I cannot tell you how surprised I am to discover that the Santa Barbara School District does not have any visual or performing arts education in their core curriculum, nor in their budgets. The Santa Barbara School District clearly believes in arts education and provides rooms in public schools for arts classes to be taught, but puts an unfair burden on working parents and nonprofit organizations to fund the arts teachers during regular school hours. We all agree on the importance of arts education. Teaching art gives our kids a leg up in a very competitive and fast-changing future. Art is more than making pretty things. It teaches creative thinking, and it is essential for problem solving and innovation in subjects such as science, computer programming, and engineering. Artists influence all of our lives. Designers make the cars we drive, the architects who build our homes, and the filmmakers create the movies that we watch. Children deserve an engaging and creative learning environment where they want to be. This type of education is possible for them in public schools by making arts part of core curriculum. It should be more than STEM, it should be STEAM. It should be science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. It is possible by investment by the school board to fund professional development for teachers and principals, to have workshops for them, to know how to include visual and performing arts in daily learning. Arts is the language of creativity. It gives voice to ideas that children and even sometimes adults can't always find the words for. Education needs to include history through storytelling, art, and music. It should be about dancing and singing while developing social and communication skills and interpersonal awareness. I ask that you consider funding the arts programs in our public schools and to increase professional development for our educators so that they can enrich our children's education. We are a culturally rich city, and our public school system should reflect that. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I make a clarifying comment? Ms. DeLong, much of what you stated was eloquently stated, but you have your facts inaccurate. We fund all of the art teachers, so maybe a conversation. Dr. Bendrati is responsible for secondary education. And Dr. Ramirez, if you could raise your hand, he's responsible for elementary education. And
okay, because I know at our school at Roosevelt, the parent fundraising pays for the art teacher. It's not funded by the school district.
So I think it would be good.
And I think ICANN pays for some of the other ones too.
I think it would be good to talk to
that's a nonprofit.
both of those two people, and they could help give you the information you need.
Okay, thank you.
And next, if we could please have Jay Bishop.
Good evening, everyone. It was nice listening to you guys come up and get your awards and listen to you speak, but it's kind of hard to follow. I was thinking about my own personal awards, and maybe I'm supposed to list those at this time. I can only really think of one, and it's feeling kind of dated at this time. I was the Environmental Educator of the Year back in 2011 when you guys were like 12 years old. So I'm here tonight because the outdoor school at Rancho Alegre would like to get the Santa Barbara schools to come back to our site. Some of the schools have been coming to our site for over 50 years, and that tradition was broken this year. So we'd like to get you guys back, and the last time I came and spoke here, that was great because it generated a meeting with Dr. Ramirez, and also tonight I got to speak to him again, and so he's gotten to speak to some concerns that people have had, and I think that we're addressing them. And so at this point, I would like to urge anyone who's involved in the decision of where the Santa Barbara schools go for their outdoor school experience to come up and see our program in action and see just how great our program is, and to listen to some people who have been to our site and interacted with the people there. And so please come up. You have an open invitation. Give me a call and come see, especially if you can come on the first day, because you'll see just how everything is so well thought through and that everything within our program has meaning. So yes, we do teach science, and we do it within the curriculum that is being set by the state and the next generation science standards, but we also do more than that. And you really have to come up and experience for yourself to really truly understand. So come up and see us. You're invited.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, Kenneth Locke.
My name is Kenneth Locke. I spoke before the City Council before the holidays, and my public comment was in relation to the connection between health and wealth. And as I mentioned to them that I'm sorry to say that the community's wealth is not healthy. And it's really important to understand wealth. The two have to be understood as like kind of interrelated. It's kind of like atoned. It's kind of like having wealth and health, and then in the circle, it's where the two are interrelated. And again, if you have wealth which is not healthy, it just doesn't work. And as I mentioned to them in the public comment that I did, is it's really important for the children, say, of this community to first consider becoming healthy, and then going out and then get a profession, and then becoming so-called wealthy. One thing that I've discovered is that when it comes to like an educational value, I mean, I think historically we refer to, you get an education, you spend time and money on an education, and then you get a job, and then the idea the money you make is equivalent to educational value. But I'm sorry to say that that's not really a good way to figure it out, because ultimately people should not just go to school just to learn how to make money, and they should actually get an education that has value. When it comes to now for education, I'm claiming to actually be bringing education into reformation, into the interdisciplinary perspective, and the idea of what a fine artist is. in relation to them creating fine art. And actually, a fine artist is actually, I'm here to say, is a person who actually is able to provide an educational value. And I'm actually the equivalent, and to understand that is that I can actually teach people art history in relation to the evolution of human consciousness through the 20th century, in relation to the abstract art movement, in relation to the connection that the philosophy of aesthetics has with the philosophy of metaphysics and stuff like that. And then when it comes to athletics, the kids really haven't been, or so-called sports, I think the kids aren't really being taught.
You have 30 more seconds.
Thank you. They're not really taught the mind-body integration, and that's why I represent kind of the first teacher through the athletic discipline of tennis, who can actually teach the basis of having complete integrated knowledge, complete and integrated exercise, holistic health. So I can actually pass along, again, an educational value that provides the kids with becoming healthy. Thought I'd share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you. We move on to acceptance of donations for January 12th, 2016.
Mr. President, if the kids want to get back to homework and their life, they're free to leave any time. And if, Mark, if you have to get ready for tomorrow, that's okay too. Okay. I'll make the motion that we approve the donations with gratitude.
Thank you. And we have a second? Motion made by Mr. Herron, second by Ms. Parker. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items, board, that you would like to pull?
If somebody would like to pause for a moment because you may have forgotten a cell phone. Ms. Jete, somebody lost a cell phone in the front, in the front row, one of the students.
Boy, Ms. Parker, you must have teenagers.
Good eye. So do we have any items that need to be pulled from the agenda? None? And seeing none, would someone like to make the motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That takes us to our item F, public hearing, but we have no items on public hearing, so we will move to the action agenda items. Excuse me. The first is board action on student discipline, case number 2015-16-17. Do we have the motion?
In case 2015-16-17, I move to approve the administrative hearing panel recommendation for an expulsion with enforcement suspended for 1 school year.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Idelson. Any discussion? If not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And moving on to item number 2, board action on student discipline, case number 2015-16-18.
In 2015-16-18, I move to approve the stipulated agreement for an expulsion with enforcement suspended for 1 school year.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Moving to item number 3, board action on student discipline, case number 2015-16-19.
In case 2015-16-19, I move to approve the stipulated agreement for an expulsion with enforcement suspended for 1 school year.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Moving to item number 4, board action on student discipline, case number 2015-16-20.
In case 2015-16-20, I move to approve the stipulated agreement for an expulsion for 1 school year.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And moving to board action number 5, board action on student discipline, case number 2015-16-21.
And in 2015-16-21, I'll move to approve the stipulated agreement for an expulsion for 1 school year.
Second it?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That takes us to item number 6, approval proposal from Public Agency Retirement Services, PARS, for administrating a Section 115 other post-employment benefits irrevocable trust.
As board members are aware, at your request, we undertook an RFP interview process and selected a finalist, and you approved them, and so here we are to finish the process so that we can create the irrevocable trust to take care of these post-employment retirement benefits, and Ms. Jeté is here.
So I'm here to request that we approve the Public Agency Retirement System, or PARS, to handle and be our irrevocable trust. And we have Natasha Davidson from PAR here to answer any questions regarding both of the items that we have on the board this evening.
Mr. Herron.
Can we have a review as to why we're doing this?
Sure. Before I was here, the staff designed a benefit package for managers at the district, and you had to have 10 years of experience in management, or 10 years in management at the district office, and it was on a tiered percentage of your health benefits. In 2009, we stopped that. No more people are in. People who left, they drop off the list. So we have an unfunded liability, and we need to start funding it. Right now, we currently do pay-as-you-go, which we pull it out of the paycheck on the employer side every time, and fund the liability, unfunded liability. So now what we're going to do is we're going to be proactive and make contributions to this fund so that we knock down our unfunded liability. So on our balance sheet, our assets are not offset by this unfunded liability. It will, at some point, not be an unfunded liability anymore. And so that's our goal. So.
Ms. Parker.
Can you talk about amounts?
Yes, it's about $15 million.
But in terms of how much would be contributing to it?
Well, it depends on how much we can afford. Mm-hmm. There's no set amount, and there's no set requirement that we have to make a certain amount every year. Mm-hmm. We do it as we feel that we can afford to do it. It will be a positive thing for our, when we get our TRAN, we'll have a better rating, hopefully, that we are doing a positive thing in getting this unfunded liability taken care of.
Mr. Herron.
Is the presumption that by having it in the trust and under this kind of advisement, the return will be greater than just sitting in our checking account?
That's correct.
And therefore, the getting to the 15 million might be faster?
That's correct. And it can't be used for anything but that.
Ms. Parker.
So if we go ahead and get this started, where does this appear? Is this like a new fund that appears in the codes? We have Fund 17, but is this, where does this appear in the budget?
It will appear on our financial statement. Mm-hmm. Right?
Just look right at it.
You might need to come to the mic.
We have our auditor in the audience, too.
Yeah, but come to the mic.
Perfect timing.
We're filled with experts.
One of the advantages of having assets in an irrevocable trust is you're able to have it as an asset which offsets the liability. So on your balance sheet, it will be under assets which will offset the liability. Okay. Also, I'm sure you've heard of GASB 68, with GASB 75 coming. Right now,
sorry, I'm about to laugh.
Another one, yes. Right now, it's only required to be a footnote on the financial statements, but with GASB 75, it will need to be an item on the balance sheet.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Herron?
Yeah. Is part of the hope that in our current financial statements, we have 2 retirement plans For the next 2 years, that's $1 million, and for 2 or 3 years after, or 2 years after that, it's another $500,000. So at the end of this, as soon as we finish one of the plans, is the attempt going to be to try to take that $500,000 and move it into this?
That's my plan.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Make sure that's a record.
Ms. Limon?
And just, again, for the record and for the public, our intent is really just to offset the liability.
That's correct.
There's no other greater reasons. It's really about trying to think about the liability and make sure that we can reach our goal.
That's correct.
Ms. Idelson?
I'm looking through the presentation here, and I'm not seeing insurance on the fund. Am I missing that, or I see U.S. Bank, and it's a trustee investment manager. Is it fully insured?
I believe anything under over 250,000 is fully insured, right?
So this trust, the district has several options for investing the assets. It can be as conservative as money market cash, but wouldn't be, what the goal of this is to have greater return. So there are different investment options which have some equity exposure, but it's ultimately up to the district how you want to invest the assets, the funds.
Mr. Herr?
In looking at the documents, 2 lines popped out at me. One, I'm not going to, I can't tell you where exactly it is, but I'll read it. Role and importance of asset allocation. You just mentioned this. Priority number 1, the asset allocation decision is generally regarded as the most important decision to be made in the investment manager process. And then later on in another document, one of the resolutions, it basically says that power is in the hands of the Megete. And then it shows the 4 different possibilities of very conservative to more risky. And do I read this to mean that Mr. Tay is given the authority to choose which of that approaches this district is going to do? And I guess my corollary question, does she want that responsibility?
I have no problem with making that decision, but I will not be making that decision alone.
And who else would be involved?
I would think that we are talking, and it's the
Yeah, so
the other.
I'll chime in here. So this is there's a trustee of U.S. Bank, and the way that the trust is set up is it's a discretionary trustee approach. So the fiduciary liability is taken off of the district, and along with that, there are also different investment choices, but it's not choosing individual stocks. It's
I know that.
choosing, asset allocation. Do you want to be a little bit more risky, less risky?
That's my choice. That's my question. Who makes that decision of how our money is invested?
It's up to the district.
Yeah. I guess I would hope.
I'm representing the district,
that I
but we
understand.
can talk.
I would hope that, since it's the most important decision, I would hope you would get advice from the board or
Absolutely.
somebody other than you personally, because I don't want you to have that liability.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Idelson?
Is there a fee for this by the fund
Yes.
management? Okay. And are we seeing that?
Yes.
I believe it's on the last page of
It's
that
page 6.
document.
Yeah. It's a percentage of how much you put in annually.
Yeah.
So for PARs, once we get there, you'll see that for PARs, there's a trust administration fee of 25 basis points, so 0.25%.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry. 25 basis points, so 0.25%. You can see up if you go a little bit higher there. So that's both PARs and CSBA trust administrator fee. And there's also a sliding scale. You can see the more assets in the trust, the lower the fee. And then also U.S. Bank, there's no trustee fee, but there is an investment management fee of 30 basis points, so 0.3%. So total fees would add up to 0.55% or 55 basis points.
And it's of the amount that is in the trust at that time. So if we reach our 15 million, we will be charged a fee every year for that.
Ms. Parker.
It's nice to be in financial times where this is even a possibility, because obviously GASB 45 has been something that we've talked about theoretically for several years at this point. How many other school districts are actually stepping forward and creating a trust?
Good question.
Go ahead.
So when GASB 45 came out, and it was about 2005, districts were starting to look at this, but then the financial crisis happened, and districts were not looking at this. Now many districts are starting to look at this, and we've had quite a few enroll. Right now we have 24 client agencies, school districts in our plan in California, and then there's other trusts that are out there as well, where school districts are in those. So I would say probably, from what I know, about 100 out of the 1,000 school districts in the state, so 10%.
Thank you. Some of them are not participating. Their liabilities are so large that they can't even begin to start making, plus they have not capped theirs. We've capped it. We've stopped the bleeding, and we're going to fund it. We're in a lot better situation than some other districts that I've spoken to.
Good, thank you.
Just a quick question, and what's our remind me of our anticipation in terms of projected when we're going to reach our 15 million?
15 million?
Get that crystal ball out.
It'll really come down to the state of the district's budget and your willingness to set aside funds to put in. Okay.
No, what I think he means is when will they all die off and it goes away?
Well, gee, I hope not, Mr. Parent. But that will happen.
But that will happen.
I think we'll get to the 15 million before that happens.
I believe we already had that presentation. Projections were done. Any other questions? If not, thank you. We do need a motion on this item. So approval of proposal from public agency retirement for administrating a Section 115 other post-employment benefits irrevocable trust.
I will so move.
Moved by Mr. Herron. Do we have a second?
A second?
Second by Ms. Parker. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Chate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere.
Number 7.
Meet up there, the two of them, because the next item is a resolution that's required.
I'll move approval of Resolution 2015-16-17.
I'll second.
Do we need to read the resolution?
Don't need to?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson.
Now we move to action item number 8, approval of resolution number 2015-2016-18 in support of recognition of 2016 as the 150th anniversary of the Santa Barbara Unified School District. Yay!
Yes,
Yay,
indeed.
Ms. Kiani is here to present this item.
Yes, we have a resolution celebrating the 150th anniversary of the school district, which began actually on June 6, 1866. But this year, we're going to take a little different strategy and start in January and go through December and do a lot of events in between and activities to celebrate this event and share it with the community. Do you want me to read this?
I think so.
Okay. Whereas Santa Barbara School District was formed on June 6, 1866, thereby removing local schools from administration by the county superintendent to the full control of the electorate of the city. And whereas in 1866, Santa Barbara functioned as one of 3 school districts in the county, San Buenaventura, Montecito, Santa Barbara, and whereas on April 7, 1870, the City Council granted the district's trustees permission to establish the first playground in the city, which was a portion of Plaza de la Veracruz between Ortega, Coda, and Acapa and Santa Barbara streets, with the proviso that the trustees plant 20 shade trees. Whereas the roots of early childhood education were linked to Santa Barbara when the first kindergarten in the county began operation in the late 1870s, and though kindergarten was not initially accepted as part of the state's education program, by 1887 the success of local kindergarten brought national recognition to our community and schools, leading to the assimilation of kindergarten into the local and state system. And whereas the community grew in 1890, and when the district had 1,228 enrolled students, the public invested in education and voted $60,000 worth of bonds for a new high school building. And whereas on August 10th, 1897, the trustees created the first plan for organization of the schools as kindergarten, elementary, manual training, and high school departments. Whereas since its establishment in 1866, our school district has educated generations of students, many of whom have gone on to serve as leaders of the community, state, and national levels. And whereas now in its 150th year, Santa Barbara Unified School District continues its rich tradition of serving the community of children by educating more than 15,500 students in school year 2016. And whereas the Santa Barbara Unified School District encourages the community to continue its investment of time, talent, and resources in support of local schools. Therefore, be it resolved that the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Education does hereby proclaim the year 2016 as the year of activities in celebration of the 150th anniversary of the Santa Barbara Unified School District, and encourages staff members, families, and the community to commemorate this unique event. The foregoing resolution was adopted by the board, we hope.
I would just like to note that there was an article in Newshawk today, and Ms. Kiani was mentioned a number of times, and that there's an exhibition at the Santa Barbara Public Library.
Yes, we have all 3 display cases there.
Yes, which is great. And I like a little bit of the history, because we're actually, 2 blocks away from the first site of our first school, so to speak.
At the Presidio, yes. And also we have a timeline in the back. There's a number of things already that are there. I hope you'll take a look, but there's a lot at the public library right now.
Could you show the picture of the kindergarten class?
I don't know that I gave that. There it is. Oh, yeah, there it is. This is Franklin Elementary School, 1899. And
you look closely, you can see Mitch Tarina.
And actually, there were some notes on the back of the picture that was sent to me, and the little boy on the lower left-hand side, you see him there, his name is Carl Cody, and underneath his name it said relative of Buffalo Bill. And on the second row, there's a little boy with a hat, to the second from the right, and that is Ray Latham, the grandfather of Rod Latham.
Wow.
So this is Franklin, 1899.
Wow.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, Ms. Ives.
Okay. To approve the resolution number 2015-2016-18 in support of recognition of the 2016 as the 150th anniversary of the Santa Barbara Unified School District.
And thank you. Let's see, the board. It's good.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that, but I want to be clear that we're also approving a small amount of money to support that, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Idelson, second by Ms. Parker. Any other comments, discussion? Yes.
Yeah, so I think, 150 years is a long time, and it actually brings up a lot of conversations, right? I think of 150 years of facilities, all kinds of things that I think of. But I think of this also as an opportunity for our community to get involved and engaged. I think so many people in our community have been touched by our school district, whether they have kids in the district, whether they themselves went to schools in our district. And so I think 150 years is a celebration, and I want to invite the community to be involved, to get engaged. And we didn't talk about it, but there is a calendar of potential events, and so I hope that all of our community, business, nonprofits will get involved, because I think that there is, we've come a long way, and we have a long way to go as well. So I think that this is a good point to come together. So, and thanks for leading this.
You're very welcome, and I think we have one more thing that we can do that will hit to the point that you brought up. This is Dr. Brennan.
can open doors and it can create opportunity. Along with hard work and dedication, my education allowed me the chance to come home and help care for the kids in my hometown. Congratulations to Santa Barbara Unified on 150 years of service to our community.
Nice.
Barbara's doing a whole bunch of those PSAs, and some of you may be tapped as students, Peabody Panthers, so.
Dos Pueblos Chargers.
Santa Barbara Dawn.
I just want to recognize that, one of the things that we always think about is how many of us are products of our local schools. I mean, the number of staff that I'm looking at, and the number of board members that we have that were all products of our local school system. So it's something that we're always are surrounded with and not always thinking about, but we are all part of this community in that regard.
We got over there 2 Chargers and 2 Dawns.
Yes.
Sitting right there. They're separated from each other. And a Royal up here.
To represent.
She's wearing red, too.
I want to acknowledge Barbara Chiani's incredible work in this effort. This is the beginning of the public part of her campaign, but behind the scenes for the past year, she has done an incredible amount of work in getting our district and our community poised to really celebrate 150 years of service. And I also want to note that by many accounts, Santa Barbara is the 3rd oldest school district in California.
Wow. And I also want to note that she's brave going into the basements of our schools. So we had a motion by Ms. Idelson and seconded by Ms. Parker. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. That moves us to our conference agenda, and item number 1, presentation of the Santa Barbara Unified School District's independent audit report for the period ending June 30th, 2015, and the required communication letter with those charged with governance.
Ms. Chate.
I just want to state that I'm married to a Royal and have 2 Dawns, but I'm not any of those. So Ed Code Section 41020 requires school districts to retain an independent auditor to audit their financial statements in accordance with the governing audit standards. In compliance with the Ed Code, the annual audit for the year ending January 30th, 2015 has been completed, and Royce Townsend, our partner at VTD, is here to present our audit, which is all good news, just to give you a summary. Thanks, Royce.
Thank you. We'll just put this down for a second. Well, good evening. It's always a pleasure to be here. And let me just fix this real quick for myself. And once again, I am here to present your audit financial statements and the required communication. So let's just go through the required communication. As I've told you in the past, it really summarizes the outcome of the audit, and there's a lot of information in there, but the critical part is the information that really doesn't find a place within the audit report that we want to make sure and reemphasize to you that, 1, did we have any disagreements with your business management, or 2, did we have any difficulties that we encountered during the course of the audit, and I'm happy to say we had neither. So let's move on to your audited financial statements, and after I complete the discussion regarding them, I'm going to speak briefly about your general obligation bonds as well. As you're aware, we speak to 3 particular areas in your audited financial statements. We speak to the financial statements as a whole, we speak to federal compliance, and we speak to state compliance. Highest level of assurance that we can always provide is an unmodified opinion. That's really the buzzword or term that you're looking for. We provide reasonable assurance, not total assurance. Total assurance would mean that we're actually looking at every single transaction, and that's not what occurs. So the outcome of your audit, financial statements themselves, we are providing you an unmodified opinion. We did not find any internal control issues that would be deemed material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that would cause us to render you a modification on the opinion. Federal compliance, I think we actually tested 3 programs this year. We did not find any issues with any of those. So an unmodified opinion related to those, with no internal control or issues related to those. And lastly, with state compliance, an unmodified opinion to all the programs save for the unduplicated count. Now, with that said, you know, you've heard me speak in the past about the financial statements, and not a whole lot changes, but actually this year there's a significant change. And earlier during one of your presentations, the buzzword GASB 68 was spoken to. So let me just briefly explain to you how your financial statements have changed as a result of the implementation of GASB 68, and more importantly, how that affects you on an ongoing basis. This year, if you have your audited financial statements on page 15, which is the statement of net position, right about in the middle of the page or 3/4 down, there's a line item called aggregate net pension liability. Oh, you're actually going to flip through here. Okay, so aggregate net pension liability. And that's new for this year, and as you can see, that's $106 million. That is actuarially determined. That number will change every single year, but that number will be on your audited financial statements on a go-forward basis, as well as some other associated accounts. Up there on total deferred outflows of resources, you see current year pension contribution, and down below here where you see deferred outflows, inflows of resources, you see some other numbers, the aggregate almost $30 million. So this is having obviously a significant impact to these statements. If you turn the page, you'll see that, in fact, not only is your unrestricted net position in a deficit position, but your overall net position. Now, I'll tell you right now that this is not uncommon as far as what I've seen for most school districts here, because this is the very first year that we're bringing this liability on. Unlike GASB 45, where that liability was amortized over a period of time, this GASB is requiring it to come in lump sum right from the very beginning. Actually, GASB 45 will change in the near future, where we'll have to bring in that entire liability as well. So the state obviously has already addressed the fact that they have a significant unfunded liability, and how they're doing that is through increased contributions on an ongoing basis. So how that affects you is, obviously, if there's an increase in the contribution rate, then that's taken more available funds that you thought you had available to you to pay your normal ongoing costs. It will impact you over that period of time to where finally, I don't think we're ever going to see a point that liability is completely funded, because it's a moving target. But obviously the intent is to eliminate the gap between the liability and the assets available to pay that liability on an ongoing basis. So, as I said, the impact to you on an everyday basis is increased contributions, which will affect your available reserves. So we can speak to that, or if you have any questions when I complete, please ask me any. And then lastly, as results relates to your two measures, Measures Q and Measures R, what we're required to do is speak to the financial statements as a whole, as well as compliance. Did you spend the monies as you stated you would? For both Q and R, we are providing you an unmodified opinion as to the financial statements. We believe them to be materially correct. And as to whether or not you complied with Article 13A of the state constitution and the bond measure language itself, we did not find any expenditures in our testing, and I believe we tested 66% of the expenditures for Measures Q and 60% of the expenditures for Measure R. We did not find any that did not align with the bond measure documents, as well as Article 13A of the state constitution. So with that said, that's your presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have on the financial statements.
Board, do we have any questions? Ms. Parker.
I think what you're saying about GASB 68 is making me suddenly feel like we're the U.S. Postal Service. Obviously it doesn't look good, and to clarify, what you're saying is that the new rules around the contributions that we're making to employee benefits and retirement, how school districts are having to pay more, is showing up here.
Well, let me rephrase this a little bit. GASB 68 can't require you to make...
Right. It's not GASB 68 that's doing it.
It's really the state of California who actually contribute a portion to the liability related to the STRS. Mm-hmm. But the state of California has said, we need to address this. As a result, legislation has been passed that is addressing it. So yes, they're recognizing that it's a significant liability, and ultimately, I don't think the state of California itself wants to pay that liability on behalf of its member school districts, so they're requiring a greater contribution from those school districts per se.
The other thing I just wanted to follow up on was the findings, and I don't know if you're going to address those separately or...
No, I can speak to that.
Now.
Sure.
Obviously, we always have ASB issues, turnover, new students, new parents, new staff. We always have ASB issues. And I don't know if this is a Ms. Jeté question, but the other piece that you tested where there was an issue was student enrollment in free and reduced lunch that you were talking about.
Yeah, that's the state compliance.
It's a state piece. And in 2014, you found an issue. And when you tested at different sites in 2014, I believe it was just maybe Alta Vista or La Cuesta.
We rotate sites through,
Right.
so yes.
But it was at a number of different sites this year, and instead of getting better, actually our problem, it may have always been what it was, but it manifests itself in a larger way. And so I guess probably this is a follow-on question to Mr. Tay, because I feel like we need to check in on this at some point during the year. What are, I know the findings are saying that the district is absolutely going to deal with it, but they did say also that we were going to deal with it in 2014. So I want to be sure that we're dealing with it in 2016.
It's complicated because the free and reduced side of the house, which is in NutriKids, in the food service area, has different rules and times, their cutoff dates. Whereas on the fiscal side and the unduplicated pupil count, they have another cutoff date. They have a 30-day grace period where if you don't turn in your free and reduced meal plan, that we let the children still have free meals. What we did is we didn't capture those kids in those 30 days, that we didn't have an actual physical document in our hands, and they were counted in the free and reduced count. So we learned that that was not a loophole, but a crack. And so yes, we are filling those cracks as quickly as we identify those cracks with ETS and fiscal.
Yeah, and if I can speak to that just briefly, this is not also an uncommon comment for the first couple years. And as was alluded to, the biggest problem is there's somewhat of a disconnect between the federal requirements, which your food service departments, pretty much, that's their main funding source. So that's what they look at. And this new element, which is the LCFF, the local control funding formula, which is looking at it from a state level. So there's two different requirements. And I truly believe that it's more of an education issue, just ensuring that everybody understands that there's two different requirements here. One that has nothing to do with how the one department runs, but is essential to the overall funding model of the school district. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Mr. Herron.
My favorite topic, and this will be my last chance to talk to you about it.
Well, you know, you had a comment last year.
And you fixed it.
We fixed that.
Yeah.
We provided more information for the readers, so that way it's a little bit more informative as far as that accretion element.
I was going to compliment you on that, but you...
I beat you to it?
You beat me to it, yeah, okay. But on page 51, I have a question.
Okay, I'm there.
In the accreted column,
Okay.
Two of the bonds, the 5, 4, 11, have accretion in that column.
Yes.
And when you turn to the next page, you see that accretion number in two of the items. But there's a third item that has accretion that doesn't flow to that chart. And I'm curious why the...
Yeah, I'm trying to...
Let me see which one it is.
It's probably the 6512, because I see, and you can always kind of tell if a bond has an accreted
It's the 2010 general obligation bond at the bottom of 52 that has an accretion of 22 million.
I'm sorry, so where are you reading this, sir?
In the bottom of page 52.
Okay.
It has, you see the number 20, it has accretion of 22,367,787. But yet, when you look at the column on the previous page, that particular bond doesn't have any accretion, even though the outstanding balance is more now than it was originally, which indicates to me that, is the accretion number correct in there? Is there a reason that it's not?
Well, and I would probably suggest that it probably relates, without looking into this right, but it probably relates to the 2014 general refunding. At the very bottom of that, on page 53, that you'll see it refunded an outstanding portion of that 2000. That might be the wrong one.
That's a different one.
Yeah, that might be a different one.
That's good news, too.
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, I would have to look into this to be able to provide you that answer.
I'd like to know why that...
Absolutely. That's a great question, and as I said, I'm happy to look into that to find out why that's the case, why that isn't. Yeah, because I think I understand what you're saying.
The wording is identical in the 2010 Series A, the 2010 Series A secondary. There's an accretion. Both of those have accretion.
Right.
The wording is identical in the bottom on 52, but the number doesn't transfer to the chart on page 51.
Right, and the only answer that I could have without looking into it is that the portion that's accretive is at the very beginning, and it's already moved over. So that's the only thing that I could, yeah. But once again, that would just be an off-the-cuff answer. If you want a more informed answer, then I'll have to get back with you on that.
Yeah. On the page 51, the good news, I think I would like to point out to the public, is that we did, if you'll notice, the very first line on page 51, the chart on 51, the very first line indicates that we paid off $16,505,000, and it came by paying a new bond for $14,235,000. So we saved over $2 million in those two lines, purely because we made a good business decision to refinance a loan. And so those two lines are to be proud of. And I appreciated very much Mr. Tay's work on that and getting that done. The item you were talking about on page 55, which is just a better description of the early retirement plan, and that's what I had talked about earlier, the outstanding amounts on those two plans, a total of $3,199,000, that hopefully, when those go away, that money will go into the PARs. The other item, just, I'm not sure what page it's on. Well, I'm not going to take the time. I think it's back on page 20 or thereabouts. Let me see. Page 23. Just for the rest of the board to understand. In the last paragraph on page 23, it talks about accrued interest. And our accrued interest on our bonds increased by $2,754,000. And that's a number to watch, because it's going to get bigger and bigger as we go forward, as is that accretion line is going to get bigger and bigger as you go forward.
Right.
And right now, they're in our they're not big numbers, but they're not small numbers either. But watch it; that's going to become a big number. And for future boards, I think they should be aware that that's going to be a big number and be able to understand, why that is. We could make a gutsy move by refinancing some of those capital appreciation bonds. It would take an increase in the property tax rate, but there's a potential of saving a lot of money down the road 30 years from now. But it would take higher taxes now, and that's a trade-off. But in good financial sense, it might make good sense. But it would be a challenge doing it.
It would.
Thank you very much. I've appreciated working with you.
As well.
Any other
Enjoyed your questions.
Comments or questions, board? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Well, thanks
Royce.
again. And as I said, it's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you. That moves us to item number 2, first reading of Board Policy 4315, Evaluation Supervision.
I ask Mr. Torina to present this item.
President Dr. Paz, board members, Superintendent Dr. Cash, and Cabinet, we have before you a change from the California School Board Association in regards to Board Policy 4315 and evaluation and supervision. The main criteria of the change is regarding a revision of the California Professional Standards for Educational Leaders, the CAPSELs, that was adopted by CTC in February 2014. So this is just bringing our current board policy up to date with that, with those standards, professional standards. And any questions that you have from the revisions from CSBA?
No questions?
It looked good to me.
Bring back for a second reading or consent next board?
I think so. I only had one comment or question that's not necessarily related to the policy, but the attachment, the second attachment. And it was
Capsules?
Yeah, the one, yeah, the standards. Just wondering, so all our administrators get a copy of this?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Torina. We can move on to item number 3, discussion of additional measures Q&R projects.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We're in a great position, having had our projects come in on time and under budget. As a result of that great work by staff, 2 staff members who have left us, David Weniger and Carl Mayrose, want to publicly acknowledge their great work as employees in the district under the leadership of Dave Hetjunk, and now in consultation with Kelly Coltrip and Telecu, we're in a position to present to the board with some additional projects that were on the needs list that we didn't think we'd be able to get to. And essentially we've presented those to you in kind of a rank order that, based on staff, kind of look at the needs. I want to advise the board that the amounts unassigned for measures Q and R, those totals include, would have to cover also the soft costs of any construction project. And as I've stated earlier, the totals are greater than the amounts that are unassigned. And what we're looking for now is guidance and permission to begin bringing forward to the board for your approval projects, these additional projects under measures Q and R, and like to get as many as done or assigned as possible to get started during the summer. And David Hetjunk and Kelly Coltrip are here if you have questions about any particular one.
Board. Mr. Herron.
I have one concern I hate to bring up. Peabody Stadium. Is there any need to reserve money for unexpected? I know we put another $5 million into it, but is there any reason to hold money just as a reserve in case something else happens that we don't know about once we start tearing it down?
Absolutely. Would be prudent to do so.
So of this $7 million, if we spend it all, then we have no reserve for something like that. Normally I wouldn't worry about it, but that's a huge project. And if it meant saving some of this for at least until we have it demolished and see what we were up against or with the city or whatever, I would be concerned about giving you authority to spend the 7.2 if there's any doubt whatsoever about our needs for it in the future.
I think we'll continue to have doubts until we've actually, I mean, remember, we're moving around, as you well know, dirt that hasn't been moved around for over 100 years. So it will be interesting what we do discover. So I would leave it to the expertise of both Dave Hetjunk and Kelly Coltrip as to, along with our consultants, what they think would be appropriate to set aside. We'd still, though, don't believe it's the entire $7 million, and we'd like to look forward to bringing forward some projects in that maybe would allow for that.
Ms. Parker.
I really appreciate your point, Mr. Herron, and I have no issue at all with this particular list. I think it's great. I do think it is important for our facilities team and our fiscal services to talk about holding some money back or being cautious around Peabody Stadium. One other thing I just want to call out is the lighting, parking lot lighting at La Cumbre / Santa Barbara Community Academy, because that's down on the Measure R list, and then the roofing issues. We did have just the importance of working with the school communities, anything that we can get done over the summer.
Yes.
Because we had so many issues with staff around roofing when that was going on, when school had started. And then with lighting, the La Cumbre Community Academy parking lot is very dark. It needs lighting, but it is also right in a residential neighborhood. And I want to be sure that Facilities is working with that community of neighbors right there, both above the school and next to the school, to be sure that they aren't blindsided by this with too much light, and that it's disruptive to the neighborhood at night. So I'm hoping that that's a conversation that goes on.
Absolutely.
Ms. Limon.
The other thing that I happened to be on a school site the day that it was like thunder and lightning and it was pouring, and I quickly saw what it did. I happened to walk into a classroom where there was a water leak, and I don't know how much we can wait. There's things that definitely need to be done, but if the weather conditions are what people say they're going to be, what we've started to see, I don't know if there's reason to maybe talk about setting something aside, holding off, like maybe we don't have time to hold off. I just know that I was like, wow, if this is the type of rain we're going to get continuously, it's going to make roofs especially that were okay, not less okay, and maybe not okay. So I don't know how to think about that, and I don't know if there's any advice on how we should be thinking about that.
Well, we certainly don't envision being able to, for the reasons Ms. Parker mentioned, as well as the fact that if we do get a significant amount of rainfall over the next several months, be able to engage in any of those projects at this point. And all of the roofing projects can be broken down into components, where the most significant roofs that are in need of repair get done first. What you see for La Colina, Dos Pueblos, San Marcos are more than just one building, I believe, except for San Marcos is more than one building as well. And so those would be, we would look at, okay, you know, based upon our analysis, our needs assessment that we've done, which are the buildings that need the roofs done first. And those would be projects we'd attack this summer.
Mr. Herron.
I noticed under Measure R, there's two projects at Adams, one for the playground and one for removing the old library. And as a pet project of mine, I know we don't have funds to redo some of the work areas outside the classroom to the degree that I would like them done. But if there's any money in there that can be used to clean them up, make them more sanitary, make them more usable, I would hope that as we're doing this work, that maybe something could be done in those areas outside the remaining 8 classrooms that have been a mess since I ran for office 8 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, board? Thank you, Dr. Cash.
So what you'll see next then will just be, I believe we may even start as soon as the next board meeting. Yeah, so because we know we want to get some projects done this summer, so you'll see those coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to item number 4, Local Control and Accountability Plan, Alignment for Early Childhood Education.
This is Dr. Ramirez.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
As long as we still have Ms. Parker here, can we jump right to number 6 and talk about the executive search firm while she's here?
Certainly.
I would make that request, and I'm sorry, Dr. Ramirez, but you got to be here anyway, so. Okay.
Take a seat again. Get comfortable. So we'll move to review and discussion of executive search firm proposals for the recruitment of a new superintendent and selection of finalists to present to the Board of Education at our next board meeting, which would be a special board education, special board meeting scheduled for January 19th, a week from today.
So you have the 4 search firms that responded to the district's RFP. All of you have received their packets. They were posted on the agenda, and we're looking for direction from the board as to whether you would like to interview all 4 firms or listen to all 4 presentations or a subset of these 4, and also direction on the amount of time we would like to direct them to limit their presentation to.
Ms. Parker.
For better or for worse, 3 of us have been through this process before. And what I had said to Dr. Cash was in 2011, as the other board members who were there at the time will remember, we had 8 proposals come forward. And then we narrowed that down to 4. And 4 made the presentation. We made the decision, we had a very long discussion after those 4 presentations, and then we made the decision on that night. We voted to hire a particular search firm. And really within 24 hours, we had questioned that, and by the next board meeting 1 week later, we had changed to actually a third. You know, we'd run through the idea of a second or a third. We needed all 4 of those presentations, and so I was impressed with all of them. I mean, I definitely have my favorites already, I would say, in the list. And if others want to narrow it down, I'm totally fine with that. But I'm a little cautious about narrowing it down at this point because I'm worried that we need to hear their presentations. I would also suggest that we not vote on the same night, that we vote at the next regular board meeting on the 26th, so that the community can weigh in, people can watch the video, and we have a little bit of time to, do some more due diligence before we make a final decision. And so I'm a little bit reluctant to narrow it at this point just because of that. My preference is for very, very short presentations. So, because the board will talk a lot. We will need to talk a lot. And so, my suggestion would be like 20 minutes or less for the firms to present.
Yep, I agree with everything Ms. Parker said, but I'll add a couple caveats. The firm we chose back in 2011 first, we found immediately there were problems, and so we asked them to withdraw, which they did. We then went to Leadership Associates, which was our second choice, and they declined to help us for various reasons. So then we went to HYA, and we had Rudy, and it was a great experience. I mean, he's helped us all. We've had sessions with him. So my first impression was HYA would be my first choice. But in looking at the proposals, I found it interesting that HYA basically says you have several options of your process, from wide open from day 1 to closed totally until you make your selection. Leadership Associates says it's got to be a closed to the last minute. CSBA says it's got to be open from the first session. So you got 3 different potentials there. For that reason, I almost want to hear these 3 just to hear them defend their position as to why one versus the other, even though HYA gives you the pros and cons and the questions that might be asked. Our process in 2011 was good, but in retrospect, HYA did not bring us a huge number of top candidates, other than Dr. Cash at the last minute. But the process itself. But what I was surprised with HYA is they didn't even mention in their discussion that they had helped us and has a lot of information about our community and what our community wants in wanted in a superintendent back in 2011. I sort of would like to know through their process what has changed and how they could use that information versus new information. So that'd be an interesting topic of discussion. Long was not one of our choices 4 years ago, and for various reasons, I would not be unhappy if we didn't hear from them for a lot of reasons, but I'm happy with 3 of these to hear their presentations. As far as voting on the 19th, I'll add one problem. They all indicate they want to start immediately with meetings with the board. And I have to let you know, I'm out of town for the 2 weeks following our next meeting. So I wouldn't be available until somewhere around the 8th of February if there was an intent to have a board meeting immediately after the 19th at some point. But I am available between the 19th and the 27th. Not that that should be anything, but just so you know, I won't be available for any preliminary board discussion until I get back on the 8th.
Ms. Limon.
I just want to follow up on that with the timeline from 2011, which was, all right, we actually didn't make a final choice on a search firm until February 8th, and then started after that process. So I think, and I really appreciate Dr. Cash, you letting us know when you did, that we're in a good timeline position.
Ms. Limon.
Thank you. I appreciate what my fellow board members have said. I'm okay with interviewing all 4, in part because what I didn't know almost 5 years ago was how much the board would be working with the people that we selected. I almost feel like the people outweigh the proposal itself. And I remember spending a whole Saturday with these individuals and them, learning what is important to us, what's important to the district, spending time here. So I'm okay with interviewing all 4. I do know some people, but I don't know everyone that's in each proposal has 2 leads, and I don't know everybody. I don't know all 8 individuals. But I actually also know what elements of the first round are really important to me, and they may not be important to anybody else. And I want to throw those out there because one of the senses that I wasn't sure from all of the proposals was the level of flexibility that they had. Some read as if there is no flexibility. This is our product, you take it as is or there isn't. And I'm going to mention those elements that at least are important to me because I'm going to be looking for this, and I think I might as well people should just go to it and not waste time type of thing. But the public input process, a bilingual public input process, I think is important to me. I'm not sure if our community is looking for the same thing that it was 5 years ago as it is now. So I think that that's an important element to me. The other important element, and definitely varies among the 4 proposals, is the idea of semi-final interviews with the board. That is something that we did do. We did final and semi-final interviews, and I personally found that extremely helpful. And so that's something else that I'm looking for. I did, in some ways, think of the transitional leadership meeting post a decision. I thought that that was helpful. It's hard to just start without knowing what the team's going to be like, and so forth. And the other piece is I think it's important to think about, it seemed like some of these read as there's a cookie cutter approach to how recruitment is done. And you see a lot of the same either entities or websites there, but I'm curious how we could go above and beyond and think about this. There is a lot of, not a lot, but there's other leadership change in education here in our community. I don't know if that has any impact at all. It's not for this, but it's for other things. And so I'm definitely interested in a diverse, rich applicant pool. And so I think that those are things I want to know outside of the websites that everybody says they're using, and really how do you deliver that? And so I think that those things are personally important to me. I'm only sharing them because I feel like if the search firms are watching this or hear this, then at least they know, well, here's what one board member is thinking. I think as far as the time, I'm willing to invest the time in all four. And I think 20 minutes or so is enough, and I would be okay with that.
Ms. Eidelson.
And being new to going through this process, I'm all ears, and I really appreciate everything everybody's saying, and I would be most interested in all four, just to be able to have the opportunity to learn more about what's going to be involved.
As well, I'm interested in hearing from all four, because 4 proposals is not a lot for me. And I think one of the things that I would have as questions are, and would love to hear from fellow board members in terms of your thoughts as we move forward, is scope. Sort of in that, I mean scope in terms of one of the questions that Ms. Limon had in terms of, is it a cookie cutter approach? Do we have more flexibility, less flexibility with some of these proposals? And then as well, when I include scope, I also, in terms of scope, in terms of how far and wide do we want the search to go? And are we looking at it strictly California? Are we looking at Western United States? Are we really looking at a national search? Because that's what some of these proposals are putting forth. And so I would be curious to hear from my fellow board members in terms of that. That would be another area. I also am of the mindset of hearing from each of the firms in terms of their individual styles, because I think that is going to be an important piece as far as how they work with us, because at the end of the day, I want it to be a process where we are embedded in this process. We're going to be embedded in this process. We're going to be working with these people intimately. I feel I have to have some sort of connection with them, that I can, pick up the phone, talk to them, and be able to ask some candid questions and hear a candid response back, and not feel like at the end of the process I go, well, did I miss something? But I thought this was happening. So that would be a really important value for me to look at in some of these proposals. That would be another piece that I'm also looking for. And I think not only flexibility of the process, but also looking at it in terms of, flexibility in terms of, if they propose X, Y, and Z and we only want X, Y, are they going to reduce their cost? Is it a fixed cost? Those are kind of questions that I want to know. That's an important piece for me. Any other questions, thoughts, Mr. Herron?
It just reminded me of one. 2 or 3 of these indicate that if they're not successful, they'll go back and do it again at no cost, assuming that there's a majority of the board that still exists at the time. If they're listening to this, it'd be nice if they could drop that section of it, because there's no guarantee that the majority will remain a year from now.
No. Ms. Parker.
Although I also do appreciate that whatever board is here, because there have certainly been, even in our county, failed superintendent searches that have required the search firm to start the process all over again. So probably with new board members.
I agree. Any other questions, comments, board? Ms. Simone?
I just have a question, and I don't, Dr. Cash, I'm happy to type some of this up if you, I don't know who shares it with the search firms, or what do you suggest?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Sandra Trujillo is going to be the contact person for the search firms, and as a matter of fact, tonight, right now, she's going to be sending an email to what I'm heard, all 4 search firms, their contacts, giving them a time certain on January 19th. We'll start with 5:30 as the first search firm. We'll give them in 30-minute increments, so it'll be 5:36, 6:37, knowing that you may have more than 10 minutes of questions.
Yeah, I would make each 45 minutes apart. 30 minutes, if they do 20 and we have 10, I'm going to take 10.
You know, earlier I said I was happy to be at this meeting. I'm starting to reconsider that. Retirement might be a little closer than January 19th.
Bring your dinner with you.
So am I hearing all board members agree with Mr. Herron? 45 minutes is the increment? So that would mean 5:30, 6:15, 7, 7:45.
Ms. Limon?
I think to be safe, I mean, it did take a while last time, and so if we are early, we're early, and they tend to get here, I mean, on time. I just think it's better to be safe than have us go over by a lot.
And are you okay with, we'll send out an email designating time, but we may have firms need to switch times with others. Are you okay with that? You don't need a specific order of presentation?
No. And I agree with the proposed time as well, because there is always that transition between one group coming in and one group leaving, and
Just trying to get you guys home before,
sure.
It's too late. All right, well, I think we know, and so that email, Ms. Trujillo, has got already formatted to send out to those search firms, so they'll get it this evening. We'll follow up with a hard copy tomorrow.
And so, Mr. Hill, I'll send you an email with some of these things, if they may or may not want them, but I just...
They'll want them, trust me.
I just figure, okay, I give them
And we'll make the decision the 26th?
We'll set up the board agenda so that you may act on it on the 19th if there's a will of the majority to do so. If not, you just receive the presentations and make your decision on the 26th. I figured that unless you don't, that just gives you all flexibility.
Mm-hmm. If that's agreeable to the board, we'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ooh. Oh, sorry. Escaped.
We are back on item number 4, local control and accountability plan alignment for early childhood education.
May I, since we're going out of order, we have our item number 5, we have a couple of people who are here that might have some technical questions regarding A2A, the attendance software and services agreement.
Okay.
Would it be possible, I've seen them, they're sitting in the back row, both wearing suits, both have red ties on. And while Ms. Wagonek's making the presentation, they were here as support.
So, Dr. Ramirez, you're going to take a seat for a little bit of time?
You're not here for A2A? Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's all right.
I can't see that far.
It's all right.
All right.
We're here
So.
for Imagine Learning, just supporting the district.
Got it. Oh, it's Brennan. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Dr. Ramirez then.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Dr. Ramirez.
No.
Yeah, whether he's going to come out or not.
You,
Wow.
you could be the leader in musical chairs right now.
Sorry about that. It's about time I retire, I guess.
Well, good evening, Board President Dr. Paz, rest of the board. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present. So over the last several months, we've had an opportunity to discuss, to further discuss the LCAP and its alignment to the strategic plan and to furthering the aims of the strategic plan. And what we have, what I will be briefly presenting today is our component of early childhood education. And to give you just context, or to give the public context, the focus on early childhood education is really embedded as part of AIM 1 in our district's strategic plan. And so as this is built out into a greater and greater sense of priority, and we recognize its value, it's becoming its own goal, which we aim to really address and fulfill as part of our discussions in LCAP. So, and this is really language from the strategic plan. The effort is to ensure a strong foundation in learning by enhancing instruction for all our students in the district's early childhood preschools. And as we start to talk more and more about early childhood education, our folks and staff and partners would not let me live down if I didn't say that we're really talking about the 0 to 8 space, not just exclusively a 0 to 5, but really kind of broadening that to really encompass what maybe hasn't traditionally been the view of early childhood. So, but for the sake of our discussion today, we'll focus much more heavily on preschools. Also, continuing to expand our partnerships with community agencies and finding ways to expand educational achievement for children in ages 0 to 5, as well as to develop and implement a plan where pre-K education or preschool education is available for all students at their neighborhood school. So these are the real actions and aims of strategic plan. And now into LCAP actions associated with early childhood education. The first part is that we have already moved forward with developing a plan, at least a preliminary plan. This plan was presented by Michelle Robertson, our preschool coordinator, last spring of 2015, and it's our initial attempt to really talk about early childhood education in Santa Barbara, or at least for our district, relative to needs and really where we are in terms of our programming. So many of these components are addressed in that plan, and that's a three-year plan that we put forth. And we definitely need to cycle back and have a lengthier discussion, but at least an initial plan has already been laid out. And certain components of this specifically are to, again, increase the available seats for all 4-year-olds in all preschool sites, to conduct an outreach campaign and outreach further to the community, as well as to really focus on strengthening the professional learning of our staff, of our teachers who are really serving students on a daily basis. The other piece of this is that with this comes a cost, and right now we are in a position where more and more of the cost is being kind of absorbed into LCAP, including the preschool coordinator position. Ensuring that all preschool sites are accredited, that's another big piece of this function, and soon we'll be able to report out, because we're going through that accreditation process now. And finally is to coordinate early childhood and after-school programs as an RTI system for TK6. This language really comes directly from the language in our LCAP, and that has already started to be addressed in our early childhood plan.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
I know you mentioned about absorbing the cost of the preschool coordinator, but up there it says
yes, I'm sorry. This is language. Absolutely, this is language from the LCAP, but that really should read preschool coordinator.
Okay, so that's a mistake.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So again, as part of actions associated, we've already delivered that preliminary plan. That's something that we'll continue to build out. That was delivered in 14-15. In here, this is the function specifically as the allocation of funding for our preschool coordinator position, which has already been factored into LCAP as presently constructed. You've recently heard the presentation that was put together by our preschool coordinator, Michelle Robertson, in conjunction with our two representatives from the Kindergarten Readiness Network. And that is a network that just continues to build and really looking to how we as an entire system support early childhood from facilities that aren't necessarily part of our school district, but that are a part of serving the community more broadly. And another piece is we have embedded and developed over the last couple of years Waterford Early Literacy Program in our fixed in our preschool classrooms, and that's something that is continuing to build out as we turn more and more of our attention to literacy and aspects of improving literacy in our youngest learners. And finally, we another big piece that hopefully will begin to shine through more clearly is that we want to see develop more intentional alignment in terms of many of our initiatives. So in this case, the parent engagement framework that was presented to you a few months ago, what we want to do is really use that as an opportunity to connect with our families. So the intentionality behind that is to promote literacy, not just in the traditional ways in which we might view literacy around phonics instruction and phonemic awareness, but really to foster the habits within the family structure that allow for that sense of value and continuing to further the importance of literacy as a function of the family unit. So that's really where the preschool provides us a great opportunity to begin to work with our parents as well as with our kids on developing strong habits that will be fostered and furthered as that child progresses through our school district.
So I actually have a question about this slide. Our district has had different reiteration of Waterford programs. Can you speak to how that aligns with what's been done? I mean, we had the mobile Waterford program that's not around anymore, and why this direction is of greater benefit in some way to some of what we've done in the past.
Well, the mobile Waterford program is still viable. It's still something that is in operation.
It's still in operation, and our role in that operation is.
It is part of our program. We have a partnership or series of partnerships that have allowed that to continue.
And
but
that's
it is
not
still
going to end? That's not coming to an end?
That is something that we're going to be talking more about because there's going to be a rebranding of that and a repurposing, and we'll be issuing some more details about what that process will look. And it really firmly aligns to the last point around the parent engagement and ensuring that that the function of parent education and connectedness to the school district really works hand in hand with that particular initiative, that particular program. But to speak to the Waterford program, this program is really intended to be a supplemental program, and it really does focus on those early literacy skills, including
supplemental for preschool, supplemental
for preschool. Supplemental for preschool. So it is something that is built out over the last 2 years, where our preschool teachers actively use the program and have the students actively using the program with approximately 20 minutes a day. So it is intended to be supplemental. It's not intended to be core instruction.
And I look forward to hearing the future presentation that you mentioned.
Absolutely.
And likewise, I think one of the things that Ms. Limon is alluding to is that both of us have heard rumors, I would say, at this point in time. Maybe one of the things you want to consider as you roll this out in terms of sort of repositioning what Waterford actually does is, and how you're going to engage parents in that discussion is think about doing it a little earlier, because there are sort of rumors out in the community that's ending. There's not going to be an opportunity for parents to still receive some benefits. So I think there's a little bit of need for clarity, I would say, at this point in time.
Yeah, and we've, yes, I agree. And we have a communication plan that we've been considering, and a lot of this really took a lot of groundwork to try to align those initiatives with others that we already have in place. The communication piece, we will start here as early as this month and into next, in terms of starting to provide a consistent message out to the community that really clarifies the intent of that particular aspect of early childhood moving into 16-17.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. Appreciate it very much.
We move on to a discussion of attention to attendance A2A software and services agreement.
Not with the two guys in the back with red ties. And now that I can actually see clearly, I recognize you, so I'm Please accept my apologies. Sorry, Fran. I think I freaked Fran out, too.
I just thought I had extra support tonight. Dr. Paz Board, I'll present from here. Attendance and attention to attendance is taking on an even greater focus now under the LCAP, LCFF, ESSA, as it should, because with I want to start my hopefully brief presentation tonight with the idea that we know that students who have chronic absences aren't at reading level by 3rd grade. We know all their indicators of dropout by 6th grade, all these sorts of things. And so that I'll be talking about the financial aspect of this and what we stand to gain financially from undertaking the use of this software. But I do have to start by saying it is about students being in school, and it's going to help us, I believe, help us do that better. And so really, we have visited A2A several times in the last few years. Last spring, I was one of the principals who sat in on a presentation, and we didn't jump in at that time. This fall, I went back and revisited it from looked at it from a different seat, and really see that it has a lot to offer us at this point where we are as a district. First, I believe it's going to increase our capacity to do the human side of the attendance. It will, in my mind, having worked with and overseen attendance at both junior highs and high schools, it's going to free up those folks who work in attendance, and I'm talking about our classified staff, free them up to do more of the human side and support us on that. So making phone calls to families and calling, setting up meetings and talking, those folks really do, if given the time, have the opportunity to serve that role for us, to make that connection with families when students are absent. So that's one piece of it. And I know that you all have expressed, especially lately, do we have the capacity to do this? Do we have the human capacity to do this? And one thing that struck me is this actually, rather than put something on our plates, it takes something off of our plates and enhances the work that we're doing. It will help us do things better. It will pay for itself. Ms. Jeté and I, Ms. Jeté crunched the numbers and I sat there, but we figured out that we already run at about 94.7% attendance. If this helps us go to 94.79% attendance, it will pay for itself. When we break that down, we need 13 students in our district to be in school 10 more days a year in order for this to pay for itself. So we can do that. I mean, this can do that. A2A consistently returns a 1% to 1.5% gain. And so those are the numbers that you're seeing here. If we were to go, say, conservatively, just a 0.3% gain, we stand to make $268,000, almost $269,000, recoup that in ADA. And then you can see what it does if we do 1.3% growth, 1.8% growth. So financially, we stand to recoup a fair amount of ADA dollars through using the system. So really what it does for us is it automates the process of sending out the letter notifications to the families, the reminders about conferencing. It really does the clerical aspect for us. It also provides us with dashboards to look at trends. And so from my vantage point as Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, will allow me to look at the reports for each site and see, how can I support each site in the way that it needs to be supported in the work that it's doing for attendance, because like anything, our sites have different needs in this area. So it provides district oversight, but school site control. So the administrator, in secondary, usually often that's an assistant principal or the principal at the elementary site, they'll be able to suppress any letters they don't want to go home. So they still control which letters go home, but that clerical piece is taken care of for them. And there's much more. I mean, I could go into more depth, and certainly I'm sure you have questions, but I wanted to say that also, well, I actually covered that piece of us being able to provide. I think that support piece for sites is very, very important. And from our office, being able to serve the sites in that way and help them increase their attendance in a way that works for them is very important. Questions?
Have you talked to local or other districts that are using this? Like, how did you arrive at this?
Well, Dr. Jackie Mora, actually used it as a principal up in San Francisco, and she spoke. This was last spring. I remember her being in the meeting saying, we should do this, I did this was good. And so I spoke to her a lot about it, and then I read up on from a number of districts that are using it nationwide, and it's pretty widespread use.
Okay. And can you just sort of walk through for the public too what is actually changing from what we do now with this?
What's really essentially the biggest change is rather than having site staff, so at elementary that's the office manager or a secretary, and at the secondary schools it's their attendance clerk. It takes the role of running the truancy letters and putting them in the mail. It takes that whole piece out of the school site. So the monitoring and making sure you're sending the correct letters at the correct time to the correct students really gets taken out. What it adds to that, is the administrator gets a reminder monthly. Been drinking water all night and finished water. They get a tickler monthly to go in and check, and really in a way it forces the administrator to look at it, but in another way it reduces their load by automating it more for them. A2A pays the postage, it personalizes the letters for each school, so everything would go out on each school's letterhead, of course with the district logo. So everything gets personalized to the sites, but really that's the big change, is it automates that and then opens, like I said in the very beginning, it opens up the opportunity for those folks to have more the human connection piece of attendance.
But the way the parents are calling in and saying their child's going to be absent and all of that remains the same. Okay. So
none of that changes.
From the parent side and the public side, it would just be for the child who's consistently absent, they're going to notice a change potentially of how this looks? Or?
I think we'll have, definitely would bank on the fact that we will have more consistency in terms of those letters going out when they need to go out. But most families won't see a big difference.
Okay.
So they, unless we tell them, they may not even know. The procedures on their sides don't change. It doesn't impact our teachers one bit. This is really impacting administrators who oversee attendance and the attendance clerks.
So it's just basically a more efficient oversight of the absenteeism. Got it.
Yes. I should also say that it does provide us with 3 reports a year from A2A, 2 site reports, so semesterly reports, and then there's a board report. So there'll be a report that I'll be able to give to you at the conclusion of each year.
Ms. Limon.
Thank you. So it sounds like the users are some of the administrators and classified staff members. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so users are not teachers. And this entity is running it. How does that then align? If a teacher wants to say, well, I want to see like this, little Johnny's not showing up to my class, is it just my class or is it every other class? I mean, if they need it for their own assessment, how does this align with the systems we currently have in place?
So nothing changes on our end. ARIES is still where teachers take attendance. It's where it lives, and in fact, Mr. Rouse is, if you all approve, approve of this, then he'll be contacting them soon to set up a meeting, and it will talk with ARIES. That was one thing that we felt was very important, was that in terms of having all our interventions listed and having those things listed in ARIES, we needed to make sure that that was going to happen. But from the teacher perspective, they'll be able to see everything that they've seen up to this point.
And when you talk to the districts that have used it, the initial implementation process went okay. I mean, I know that we've tried to integrate our systems in the past. We've tried to use systems, and sometimes they don't work. I mean, they work great in other districts and maybe not here. So what's that feedback like?
No issues at all with implementation. It's been seamless, and they promise within 3 weeks from when we sign the contract, we can be up and running with A2A.
All right. Thank you.
My comment about it is that I'm happy to hear you mention the human element side of things, because I think attendance is just sort of a leading indicator for a lot of other issues that may be going on with the student. And so having something like this that allows staff some flexibility in contacting a parent or following up with a particular student and adding a human element to students who are chronic is really important for me, because I know this is it's the tip of the iceberg a lot of times with the attendance piece. It's stuff that may be happening at home we have no idea, no clue about, but it manifests itself with the fact that the student's not showing up in the classroom. So I think that's really an important piece, and I think that sells me on it. The fact that we're recouping our money in that, and improved attendance is also a great thing. But I think the most important thing is that we're touching kids' life to start a prevention process early on with attendance. So I really appreciate that part.
If you'd allow me quickly to share that one thing that we piloted in early December was we're really focusing on an elementary attendance. For so long it's been this primarily high school and some junior high, but we with Dr. Mora and I, in conjunction with the DA, put together a district meeting for families who had problematic attendance at elementary school. We had about 20 families here, and we had representatives from CALM, we had our own parent resource folks, we had 5 different stations that they went to from place to place, and we really want our attention to attendance to not be this punitive sort of thing, but doing exactly what you're talking about, which is, how do we find out, how do we help you, be in school? How do we help you get your child in school and really identify that? So I think the more that we can automate and shift that focus, especially for the elementary principals, they are the administrator, and their office manager is their assistant often, they're number 2. And so being able to free those folks up, and I think also give us a streamlined consistency across the district with what we do while still being able to tweak it to each site is really important. I'm pretty excited about the direction we're trying to go in, and I feel like this will take us there, or help take us there.
Yes. Thank you.
Can this come back on consent or on the 26th?
I'm okay with consent, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And we're at the end of our agenda. Next meeting will be next Tuesday, January 19, 2016. We start at 5 o'clock here, and we do interviews that day, starting at 5:30.
Correct.
So if there's nothing else, Mr. Herron.
One coming event, the Santa Barbara Symphony is doing their annual event where they invite about 3,000 students, many of which are ours, to the Granada to hear the Santa Barbara Symphony do certain things. That's Friday the 15th. I can't be there, but if anybody else can be there, it's a great event to see these kids come in and learn a little bit about music.
Yes. I think it's in the morning, correct, Mr. Herron?
The session I was invited to was 10 to 11.
That's correct.
I'm not sure if there's one after that or one before that, but there are 2 sessions.
Yes.
And we typically have well over 1,000 students participate.
It's quite a spectacle. I've been walking downtown when they do it, and there's buses lining up around the
Buses
corner.
all around the corner.
Yes, you either completely avoid walking in front of the Granada or just walk on the other side of the street.
It's a great thing that the symphony provides
Yes.
for our students.
Completely agree. If there's nothing else, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you.